Hello everyone. Today's case really reminds me of our Highway of Tears cases mixed with the disappearance of Leah Roberts, when a young woman travels across the country to find herself, but would instead disappear. 18-year-old Jennifer Pentilla was born April 4th of 1973 in Butte, Montana, to her mother Lynn and father Nick. She also had a sister. They were mainly raised in Great Falls, however. Jennifer was described as thoughtful, confident, and above all hopeful. She was also said to be amazing at taking accountability of her own behavior, something a lot of people normally struggle with. She was also fearless, ambitious, and direct. She read Nancy Drew mysteries, studied geography, and liked to bake cookies and decorate the house to celebrate the change of seasons. During junior high school, Jennifer actually stopped asking for Christmas presents because she realized that there were other kids out there who weren't getting any, who were less fortunate, and who were more deserving of the presents. She also would get up early for school and deliver the Great Falls Tribune newspaper with her dog Jericho. In her spare time, Jennifer also taught herself to speak Spanish. She was a young woman who had a deep faith and a giving heart. Sadly, Jennifer's father would pass away from leukemia when he was only 44 years old, which was absolutely heartbreaking to the family. Jennifer was a good girl overall, but after the death of her father, she started to seem to have trouble finding herself. She actually attended Great Falls High School, which is located in the town of Great Falls, Montana, which is very strange for me to have found out this information while I was researching this case because I've actually stood outside of this high school. And it's very strange to know a specific location in a case and have been there because most of the cases I cover are, very far away from where I actually live. I actually had an ex that lived in Great Falls and I went and spent 2 weeks there with him. And often during the day, I would go for walks in the area and he lived right down the street from Great Falls High School. It was a school he had actually attended himself. So it's very strange knowing that I stood outside of the school and looked up at it because I thought it was a very pretty looking school. And to think that a girl attended this school that years later now I would find out vanished not long after. It's just a very weird connection. But Jennifer attended the school in the late 80s. And in her junior year, she actually traveled without a chaperone to work in Sierra Leone, West Africa, where she helped till the land, crop timber, and clean brush. In the summer of 1991, Jennifer would take a trip with other teens to Mexico, where she spent her time painting and repairing old churches, as well as aiding in the construction of water and sewer projects. But Jennifer was determined to continue to travel and to continue to try to help others. So on October 1st of 1991, Jennifer would leave the home that she was living in with her mother in Missoula, a home that they had recently relocated to travel across the country to San Diego, California, to meet with a missionary group. After going to California, the goal was to ride to Mexico to join fellow aid workers as part of a humanitarian project for children. I also read in some old newspapers that she was also meant to go to Tucson, Arizona, as well as Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara in Mexico. Now, at first, when Jennifer brought this trip up to her mother, Lynn was pretty apprehensive. She didn't think it was a good idea for her daughter to be traveling alone, but Jennifer insisted that she wouldn't be traveling alone because God was with her, and that if she was able to help just one person, it would make this entire trip worth it. So she packed her bags, which included some camping equipment that her mother and sister had gotten her as a gift for graduating high school, and she also brought along $450 in cash. She then checked her mountain bike and boarded a flight to San Diego. During the first few weeks, Jennifer would camp and ride her mountain bike through unfamiliar areas of the West and Southwest, as she continued to explore areas of the country that she'd never been to before. She stopped in areas like Campo, California, Wilcox, Arizona, as well as Tecate, Mexico. During her travels, she often relied on hitchhiking and strangers offering her a place to sleep, which, as we know from talking about cases on the Highway of Tears, is a very, very dangerous thing to do. I can't imagine doing that, but then also along the Mexican border in the 90s. To think that this quite small 18-year-old girl is riding around and accepting rides from strangers in areas she's not familiar with, it seems like a recipe for disaster. But during her travels those first few weeks, she would place at least 8 phone calls home to her mother to update her on her travels. During her bike through California, glass had actually punctured her tires. It would happen again just days later while she was in Lawrenceburg, New Mexico. This time hitchhiking with a truck driver 60 miles to Deming, New Mexico. Now, Deming, New Mexico is an isolated agricultural town of cattle, chili peppers, onions, and melons with a population of 11,600 people at that time, located 35 miles from the Mexican border. While Jennifer was there, a local would help repair her tire. Around 7 p.m. on October 16th of that year, Jennifer would attend a night service at the Deming Baptist Church. After the service, Jennifer would end up asking a few of the congregation members if she could sleep in the church, use her sleeping bag to maybe lay across some of the pews, or if she could even at least, set up her tent out back behind the church. Pastor Robert Summers and his wife Loretta instead offered for Jennifer to come stay at their home overnight, and she would end up accepting this offer. Going over to their home, she ended up taking a hot shower, ate some dinner, watched some TV, and then she would go to bed around 10 p.m. Around 7 a.m. the next morning, which was now October 17th, the couple ended up taking Jennifer to McDonald's for breakfast. Pastor Robert then took her back to the church so that she could retrieve her bike. At 7:52 a.m., Jennifer would end up calling her mother from a payphone outside of Shell gas station located on Pine Street in Deming. Now, this gas station no longer exists, as you can see. During this phone call to her mother, Lynn, Jennifer would say, quote, "Mom, I have a change of plans. I will call you later tonight or tomorrow morning. I'll let you know which way I'll be going to head out of New Mexico. I'm headed to Las Cruces. I'm excited to know that I'll be home for the holidays. Love you, Mom." End quote. During this conversation, Jennifer also told her mother that her body was really worn out from all the biking that she was doing, so she had been taking a lot of Tylenol and aspirin to deal with the pain. She'd also heard that traveling as a solo female in Mexico was very dangerous, so she had changed her plans and decided she was going to bike to Las Cruces, which would take her about 5.5 hours. She then had plans to board a bus that would take her to Morse Head, Minnesota, so that she could surprise a female friend there before heading back to Montana. She also instructed her mother not to let this friend know she was coming because she wanted to surprise her. Lynn offered to send Jennifer some cash so that she could buy that bus ticket north, but Jennifer insisted she still had a few $100s in cash left and that she would buy the ticket herself. After this, the two chatted about how Jennifer wanted to frame some poems that she'd written while she'd been at some local campsites and cafes along the way. She also talked about how she could possibly sell them at some local craft shows so that she could make some extra money for Christmas. She also said she was considering enrolling in some writing and art classes in the spring of 1992 semester at the University of Montana. Lynn would later say that Jennifer's voice had some turbulence in it, and she was wondering if her daughter was beginning to get lonely and homesick being out on the road by herself. Lynn saying, quote, "I was excited that she was going to be home for Christmas. When her dad was sick with leukemia, our last 2 Christmases were pretty sad, and they were spent at the hospital. We were hoping to have a better Christmas, and I just knew we would because she was going to be home." End quote. But sadly, this 3rd Christmas wouldn't be any better, because that would be the last time that Lynn would ever hear her daughter's voice again. After ending the call, Jennifer would park her bike against the side of the gas station, and then she went inside to ask the clerk where the restroom was. Now here's where things get strange, and the story starts to become muddled. According to the gas station clerk, who was the 21-year-old son of the owner named Jesus Chuy Vasquez, Jennifer entered the gas station between 10 to 10:30 a.m. He claims that Jennifer chatted to him about her bike, which may have been white in color. He also stated she was wearing hiking boots and wool socks, and she claimed she had come from Mexicali. About 5 to 10 minutes later, he claims that Jennifer exited the restroom, purchased some snacks, and then left, walking alongside her bike and heading east. Chuy claims that Jennifer also mentioned heading to a travel agency, but went to the payphone first and stood there talking on the payphone for around 10 to 15 minutes. But Chuy's timeline just didn't make sense to me when I was researching this, because if Jennifer was taken to the McDonald's by the couple at 7 a.m., and if Lynn's phone records show that the call that Jennifer placed to her was at 7:45 a.m., how all of a sudden is there a 2+ hour time difference? Because it seems like she should have been hanging up the phone, parking her bike next to the gas station, going in, got some snacks, and then headed towards Las Cruces. So it makes me wonder, is Chuy just that bad at telling time, or is there something wrong with this timeline? Or did she arrive at the gas station, go inside, use the bathroom, get snacks, talk to him, and then went to the payphone and talked to her mom, but then that all would have happened before 8 a.m. So is his recollection of time just off and it actually all happened before 8 a.m., but he said 10 a.m. for some reason? Or is there something more to this? But as far as we know, this last conversation between Jennifer and the gas station clerk is the last time she would ever be seen again. It would turn out that while with the pastor and his wife, Jennifer had mentioned her plans to head to Las Cruces, and Loretta would end up giving her directions, saying, quote, "We told her to go to Highway 70 to Interstate 40 and gave her directions to the Fair Acres Baptist Church in Las Cruces. She asked about making a cut across to Hatch. We said that that was not a good idea. There was not a lot of traffic that way, and it was not a good idea to go that way. We assumed that she went to Interstate 70. We learned later that bikes would not be allowed on Interstate 70. So what could have happened to that poor girl?" End quote. Jennifer would fail to call her mother the following night as she'd promised. October 19th was Lynn's birthday, and again, Jennifer didn't call, which was extremely out of character for her. She would also never arrive to surprise that friend in Minnesota, and as days turned to weeks with no contact from her, it was an extreme cause for alarm. While Jennifer was in San Simon, California, she'd actually mailed her mother a package that contained 2 heavy travel books about Mexico along with a pair of tennis shoes. This package would only arrive after Jennifer would go missing. Inside, there was also an unopened envelope with Jennifer's name and the words, "Somewhere South," printed. But Jennifer was still unaccounted for. Sometime in the midst of this, Jennifer would be reported missing. And in mid-November, Lynn and her new husband Jim would actually travel to Deming in an attempt to figure out where Jennifer was and to help local police. They would spend 6 days traveling the roads in southern New Mexico, stopping at pawn shops and bike shops, as well as posting missing persons flyers everywhere they went. Police would end up tracking down that gas station where Jennifer had made that payphone call from. They would also end up speaking to a male employee there that wasn't named in the newspaper, but who I want to assume was Chewy, because he claimed to police that he had spoken to Jennifer that day that she went missing, but he claimed that she had told him that she was going to Mexico, which doesn't make sense because she had just told her mother that she didn't want to go to Mexico anymore because it wasn't safe for young women by themselves. After this, a woman at a gas station in Lordsburg would claim that she had actually seen Jennifer after the 17th, which made some people believe that Jennifer may have backtracked on her idea for going to Mexico. But nothing came of that tip, and weeks would turn to months. A year later, on September 4th of 1992, a couple named Bill and Sarah Sources from Farmington, New Mexico, were traveling through Hatch while on their way to visit family in El Paso, Texas. While the couple was driving, they were also scoping out some potential dove hunting spots, which led them to turning down a sandy, undeveloped road across from the Las Uvas Valley Dairy, off State Road 26. This area was extremely remote and desolate, known as an underage drinking and party spot for teenagers in the area, and in the direction that the pastor's wife told Jennifer not to go. Around 50 feet from the road, the couple would end up discovering some duffel bags, neatly stacked below a tarp as if someone had planned on coming back for the items. The camping gear seemed to be of good quality and in good shape, so it didn't make sense to the sources that someone would just abandon these items in the desert. After examining the items, they ended up realizing there was also a backpack, a bike helmet, a blue and gray tent, and at the bottom of the pile there were also handwritten journals. Full jars of baby food were also found, along with cigarette butts. Now, this couple was worried because seeing all these items just thrown out in the desert like this, but also neatly preserved there, made them feel like something was going on and something may be wrong here. So the wife ended up calling the Hatch Police Department to report that there may be a potential crime scene there. But 3 days later, when the couple was passing through again, they would realize that those items were still sitting out in the desert, untouched, meaning police had never come out to investigate their report. So the sources would end up collecting these items and taking them home with them so that they could do some investigating of their own. Inside the backpacks were 2 Bibles, one written in English and one written in Spanish. Inside one of them was a $10 bill. There was also a blue 5-star notebook journal with entry dates between July 11th and October 14th of 1991. A tourist visa form stamped by the Mexican government that permitted entry into the country for 180 days was marked commencing October 5th of 1991. And then a wallet would fall out. And inside of this wallet was a driver's license for a teenager in Montana, a driver's license belonging to 18-year-old Jennifer Pentilla. After finding this driver's license, the sources ended up finding a way to contact Jennifer's family in Montana, and they were able to tell them what they found. It wouldn't be until after all of this that search and rescue teams, aided by search dogs, would end up crisscrossing the area where the sources found the items. But nothing would end up being found other than 2 doll eyes that may have belonged to the stuffed animal that Jennifer often carried around and loved. But what's really strange about some of the items that were found among Jennifer's things are those cigarette butts, because as far as anyone knew, Jennifer was known to be a plain Jane. She didn't smoke and she didn't drink. Now, unless she was just hiding it from her family, and she maybe was, I guess it's a possibility. But from everyone knew, that just wasn't Jennifer. So if they weren't Jennifer's, whose cigarette butts were around her items? I honestly don't think they were ever tested. Every year during Jennifer's birthday as well as Christmas, her family would end up running ads in the Las Cruces newspaper, trying to continue to spread the word about her disappearance. One time even including a poem that Jennifer had written. At this point, her family still believed that she was alive and out there somewhere. Lynn saying, quote, "We wish her all our best and tell her to come home. I think she's out there somewhere. I think she doesn't know who she is, that whoever got her has brainwashed her or something. My mother's intuition is telling me she's alive." End quote. After the discovery of Jennifer's belongings, police began receiving phone call after phone call of pretty wild sightings of Jennifer across the country. There was claims that she was in places like San Francisco, at a hippie commune, or outside the Grand Canyon in Arizona, or living homeless in New Mexico. But then there were also multiple witnesses claiming to have seen Chewy with Jennifer the last day she was seen. An acquaintance named Sarah Chayes would later tell police that she had witnessed either Jennifer or a female inside of a shed. Another witness would tell police that they had seen Jennifer at a store in Deming with Chewy after she'd call her mother. One statement in police documents that were given to Jennifer's family reads, quote, "There have been several witnesses and sources that have identified Jesus Chewy Vasquez as the individual responsible for Jennifer's abduction and death." End quote. But it wouldn't be until December 15th of 1992 that police would finally interview Chewy, over a year after Jennifer had last been seen. But nothing came of this interview apparently. Then in 1994, Chewy would be arrested during a sting after selling narcotics to an undercover agent. He would then either accidentally OD or attempted to unalive himself, but he was unsuccessful. So then police once again questioned him about Jennifer's disappearance, but he wouldn't talk. On August 8th of 1995, Chewy's ex-girlfriend named Amy Chavez would end up coming forward to police claiming that she had witnessed Chewy wearing a leather bracelet that looked similar to one that Jennifer used to wear. Amy claimed that she had made a comment to Chewy about that and then he stopped wearing it afterwards. Around this time, another witness would be discovered to have come forward with some very, very eerie information. This witness would report that on October 17th of 1991, the last day that Jennifer was ever seen again, he'd watched as a 1953 Chevy truck made a U-turn and began heading towards a girl riding her bike towards the Hatch Airport, and he believed that this girl was Jennifer. After this, a witness who worked at the Pick's Quick store would claim Jennifer came in with two men. One came inside with her and the other stood outside by a payphone. In 1998, Lynn would make an appearance on The Maury Show in an attempt to spread the word on her daughter's disappearance. Another person of interest would be a farm laborer named Henry Apodaca, after he bragged about abducting Jennifer. Henry would unfortunately pass away in 2011 though, and was never charged. During 2011 as well, a now 41-year-old Chewy would also make some headlines after he would beat his brother to death. And apparently this all happened during a fight he had with his brother, which led him to be arrested and charged with voluntary manslaughter. And he would go on to only spend 4 years in prison. And after doing his time, he would return to Deming. Lynn is still fighting for answers for her daughter who disappeared while planning on heading back north. Lynn saying, quote, "Jennifer is daily on my mind. But come April and October, my mind is consumed by thoughts as to what happened to my sweet, beautiful 18-year-old daughter. And it haunts me that no one has been able to find her. Why has the person who took Jennifer away from her family in Montana not been caught yet? Why do they get to go on living as if nothing happened? I can't help but wonder who else this person has hurt in their lifetime." End quote. So what do you all think happened to Jennifer? I want you to leave any theories or information you may have down below, and I'll be in the comment section chatting with you all about it. In my opinion, I think Chewy's story is not a great one, and I do not believe Jennifer went to Mexico. From the information we do know, the pastor's wife told Jennifer not to take that road through Hatch because it was a desolate and dangerous one for a young girl. There wouldn't be as many witnesses if something happened to her out there. So riding next to the busy highway would have been safer for her. So it seems like she may have taken that roundabout route through Hatch because that's where her belongings were later found. It makes me think that witness that seen that truck do a U-turn and start following a young girl on a bike was most likely true then. And it makes me wonder if the individual or individuals in that truck could have been Chewy and people that he knows. Because then we have, not long after that, a witness claiming to have seen Jennifer in a store with two men. And as we know, Jennifer was often known to hitchhike. So it makes me wonder if Jennifer had started riding towards Hatch, Chewy followed her, or someone followed her, and they offered her a ride. And so she accepted because, as we remember, she was just telling her mom how exhausted she was from riding her bike. And so if someone that may have seemed familiar to her that she had just chatted up at the gas station she may have felt comfortable with offered her a ride, I think she most likely would have accepted. We have a pattern here where she would accept rides from perfect strangers. So someone who was just a recent acquaintance to her, she may have felt more comfortable even. And Jennifer seemed to be extremely trusting. So unfortunately, could this have been she finally got into the vehicle with the wrong person? Sadly, as I said, Jennifer's case reminds me of Leah Roberts' case. She was also a young woman traveling throughout the country alone. And I talked about theories as well when I covered Leah Roberts' case, the possibility of her, sitting at the restaurant and chatting up, the people sitting next to her. She may have mentioned that she was traveling around solo. She had no family nearby, no friends nearby. You gotta remember, especially in the 90s, it's not like you could just call someone on your cell phone or text someone quick. You were much more isolated and independent back then. So could the same thing have happened to Jennifer? Could she have been chatting up Chewy or someone else even along her travels that day and mentioned how she was traveling around solo and how she had been to this place and that place and she had no family nearby, that she was heading back to Montana where her family was? And these individuals would make note in their minds that this was a young girl who was impressionable. She was very friendly. She wasn't scared to share her details of her future plans, or that she was traveling around by herself. And unfortunately, she might have told this to the wrong person who took advantage of that, because then they would have known that she was the perfect victim, sadly. And then on top of that, the fact that she was so trusting that she would get into a vehicle with a perfect stranger, it could have been just someone took advantage of a very sweet young girl. But the fact that it has been decades and her case is still not solved is just so heart-wrenching. Her mother deserves answers, her family, her friends, they all deserve answers, and Jennifer deserves to be found. She seemed to be such a kind, giving young person, and she had so many goals and aspirations. She just wanted to find herself after her father passed away, and she was headed back home for the holidays to finally celebrate a good Christmas after everything that they've been through. And then this happened. It's heartbreaking. It really is. So let's take one more good look at Jennifer, because it may spark a memory in someone out there. Jennifer was an 18-year-old white female when she went missing, standing 5'5" tall, around 125 pounds, with blonde hair and blue eyes. She had a mole or birthmark on her left forearm, a laparotomy scar on her abdomen, and diagonal scars on the tips of her index and middle fingers. She also had a gap between her upper front teeth. She wore Iazza Fortel eyeglasses with brown-colored frames. Her nickname was Jet, and her blood type was O positive. Her bike was said to be a white Sundance Fuji bike with green lettering. It also had a front battery-operated headlight and a set of black saddlebags on the front and rear. Jennifer's aunt's name was engraved on the underside of the bike. The bike's serial number was F9101771. A leather friendship bracelet that Jennifer was wearing around the time of her disappearance has also never been recovered, and neither was her blue and silver sleeping bag. This is also an age progression photo of Jennifer. She would be around 51 years old now if she's still alive. Both Jennifer, her bike, along with those other items have never been located. Although it is strange to me that ex-girlfriend of Chewy's claimed that he had a leather bracelet on and Jennifer's leather friendship bracelet has never been found. It's another thing that makes me really side-eye Chewy. But if you know something, please say something. It has been way too long, and her abductor and killer could still be walking the streets, and he could be making other victims, and that needs to end. As I said, her mother and her family needs answers. Her family needs closure. This young girl needs to be found. If you know something, please say something. I'll have the contact information for the authorities down below. And as always, I hope you all stay safe out there, lock your windows and doors, and I hope to see you in the next video.